welcome back to the Planning Pulse podcast. With you as always, my name is Matt Harvison, the principal practice lead for all things Workday Adaptive Planning at Okorio. With me again, joining me for the second mini series that he's been a part of, Tom Trammel, my senior solution strategist. Tom, how are we doing today?
Yeah, doing good, Matt. Happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to have you. It's a great time of the year. I know that we just came out of a long winter season here in Dallas, and we're getting a little bit closer to Valentine's Day. You got any good plans coming up for Valentine's Day?
I've got a few things planned. It's also coming up close to my anniversary, so I gotta think holistically to make sure that I
Yeah,
cover
yeah.
all my bases.
You
So
don't want to mess that one up for sure, for sure.
no,
What
no.
year is this?
Three.
Three.
So
Okay.
yeah, year three.
You'll
So
you'll want to be able to respond faster than that in the whenever you get asked that again
oh
by your
yeah.
wife here. But
I
but
I think she forgets just as often as I do. So
well, you're lucky there. I know that
yeah.
unfortunately I'm lucky on my side because I've got the kids to help remind me about
Mhm.
anniversaries, Valentine's Days, things like
Mhm.
that. But
Yeah.
let's get into the subject at hand for us today. We're going to be
Yeah.
kicking off a new industry specific webinar series, podcast series here specifically for life sciences, biotech, pre-revenue
Mhm.
pharmaceutical companies. This subject has been one that has just fascinated me ever since I got into planning inside of Workday Adaptive Planning.
Mhm.
And when you think about it from the life sciences perspective, it's really not just about hitting the budget number. It's not about saying, yeah, we
Mhm.
kept T&E under than, lower than what we had anticipated, or we didn't just hit revenue where we thought we were going to come in. This is about protecting cash runway. It's about
Mhm.
funding milestones, funding projects, funding trials, making sure that we're planning without any type of uncertainty.
Mhm.
And adaptive helps organizations in this space move away from fragmented spreadsheets, really static plans by being able to use what if scenario analysis that's native functionality inside of adaptive.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited about this mini series that we've got. Where we're going to be heading in the mini series is going to be three episodes. The first episode that we're going to be covering today is all about clinical trials and looking at their potential for success. We're going to be looking at things like delays. We're going to be looking at dosages. We're going to be looking at patient count, all things like that. The second episode that we're going to hit on next week is going to get into the manufacturing side. So looking at costs related to specific products. So not just material costs, but also labor costs and facility and machinery costs. Then we're going to get over into tracking some of the sales or getting close to that revenue generating side. So getting more into that customer relationship side. So I know that's a lot of a lead in for us to really dive into what we're here to talk about today, Tom. But
Yeah.
as always on the Planning Pulse, if we want to go ahead and dive straight into the material and start sharing our screen and go through the
Yeah.
demonstration of what planning for clinical trials can look like inside of Workday Adaptive Planning.
For sure. All right. Yeah, so I put together this dashboard and incorporated into a larger dashboard that has a lot of other functional areas. So just starting off, it's the flexibility of adaptive. We can have each part of our process right here into this little environment that we've created, and everything in here is drag and drop, so really easy for any user to spin these up. So on the topic, so looking at specifically clinical trials, we're going to have different programs. You're going to have different clinical, individual trials per, say, a program that's looking at a specific, a specific indicator, a specific, focus of the test. And so coming in here, we've got, a few different KPIs and graphs, and really this is focused on that pre-revenue, like you said, Matt, and focusing on, the cash side. Do we have the cash to make it through these phases of the clinical trial to get us to that revenue producing
Hmm.
point? So, having some, very, very easy to read graphical charts that say, what's our runway, on our burn every month and how far are we going to get there? Our assumption right now that I've used is, we want to make sure we've got about 12 months worth of cash going. So looking at our projected spend and then having a metric that dynamically will adjust based on, what that funding looks like, as well as then giving us some more information on that. And, one more interesting thing when we do those kind of multiple phases out, what's the probability of success? We got to weight those because in reality, we may not get there. So I don't want to, focus on, the 100% of those costs when there is a probability
Yeah.
weight that needs to be applied. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. When you start to think about this planning model that you've got directly inside of this dashboard, this clinical trials
Hmm.
tracking, for all folks who are planning for projects, I can see here that,
Hmm.
if you're planning for projects, if you're planning for programs, if you're planning for trials, whatever it may be, you can
Hmm.
break out each individual phase with anticipated start dates, anticipated end
Hmm.
dates, specific budgets for each phase of that
Hmm.
trial, of that program, of that
Yep.
project, and then track actual spend.
Yep.
Again, like you said, we're really monitoring the cash runway, not just on a totality of the trial, but down to the phase level as well. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can control, what is the estimated start date? How long is it going to take? But, even in, again, it's dynamic. It's all, things are always changing. So adding in little touch points here and there for, maybe one phase gets a little delayed. So that has to trickle through all the other phases too. So building in that logic here, very straightforward to do using Adaptive's platform here. And so, yeah, this type of data is that list base that's going to keep track of each one and all those kind of key indicators. And so then
Hmm.
we slide down to, what does that all look like together from a planning model itself? And so in our cube sheet here, I've got, by program and then the clinical trial here and broken up into the phases, looking at, a different,
Hmm.
or, just a different flow of figures based on what phase we're in and keeping that kind of waterfall going.
Yeah.
So yeah. And again, some touch points into what do we think that burn curve is going to look like for that budget to help give us and the manager some idea or some kind of idea and input on, what do we think that flow is going to be like? Because this, in our example here, we've got that spend kind of more generally, but for your organization, this is, it's going to be a bottom up build. And so this burn curve assumption here may come from a more detailed OpEx and COGS and direct cost planning model to then develop this type of curve. So again, lots of flexibility, lots of ways that you could set this up,
Yeah.
and very, very intuitive for the user who's used to building these in say Excel. So
Yeah.
not something that's kind of out of the ordinary here.
Yeah. And I think when we talk about the phases and we're talking about, total months within a phase in the burn curve as an example, like you said, it's very flexible. You can change it
Mhm.
agile. Maybe you get midway into the year and realize that this particular phase is taking longer than
Mhm.
expected.
Yep.
Adaptive allows you to be able to do that what if scenario analysis, right? Like if you wanted to
Mhm.
come in and say, okay, phase one is taking
Absolutely.
us a little bit longer than expected, how easy would
Mhm.
something like that be able to spin up?
Yeah, so we don't want to, interrupt our kind of main forecast. So the versioning capability in Adaptive allows us to come into our specific scenario that we're working in right now, this version for our 2026, and I want to create a what if scenario. So right here in the drop down, you can come in and make a base, a kind of a replication of the base version that we've selected, and
Hmm.
choose create a what if scenario. So now we've got a live replicated scenario that we can, directly compare with our base version without affecting the core data. This is something using Excel or some of the other products on the market that, you have to create a whole new kind of base scenario and update, lots of assumptions. And then when you're ready to choose and move forward with that scenario, it's very cumbersome to transfer all of those changes, all those inputs over to the new primary forecast. Where in adaptive, I could just say, "Yep, this is what we want to move forward with," and I'm going to merge any changes that I've made in that what if scenario up into my base version, and then it updates, and we just keep moving forward. So very, very nice to have that feature to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tom, I appreciate you hopping on and doing a demo for
Mhm.
us and for the
Yeah,
podcast today. I know that our viewers and our listeners sure enjoy watching you demo more than they enjoy watching me demo. So I always appreciate you hopping on and walking
yeah.
us through. But if you are out there and you are planning for trials, programs, projects, and you want to see it broken into phases and you want to be able to associate start dates and end dates and budget specific to each one of those phases, You saw today that we can monitor burn rate, cash burn rate. We're monitoring what our cash runway is. All of those things are possible inside of Workday Adaptive Planning. You don't have to continue to do this process inside of static spreadsheets, wondering, if we're going to make a change, what kind of impact is that going to take? How many days is that going to take for me to be able to produce sort of what my reports are going to look like? Adaptive will be able to help you with that right out of the gate. But Tom, any final thoughts about cash runways, trials, any type of clinical trial planning, anything that you want to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I mean, the financial side is, just as important to maintain and achieve those goals. So having something flexible like this that, we can have all of this data and information and be able to monitor it and keep track of it is really something that's going to, set you up for success coming from, say, more of a static platform like Excel or, some of the other products out there. So yeah, definitely happy to meet up, with anybody who's interested, go through it, show them what this can do for their organization.
Absolutely. And that's a good point is, we at Okorio, we want you to reach out. If you want to see this demonstration, a little bit more detail, see about maybe how it can be customized for your organization, we're happy to have that conversation. But today we went over high level what clinical trial forecasting could look like, cash runway forecasting, cash burn rate can look like inside of Adaptive for life sciences and biotech organizations. On our next episode inside of this mini series, we're going to be getting into the manufacturing side of the house, looking at costs for materials, for labor, for facilities. So if you want to see what that looks like, tune in next week. You can plan on it. We're going to be there.